general meeting, and then as well as some of the key messages that were heard in the session where we were reviewing the Cotton Australia strategic plan. So first up, though, just some of the things that have been happening, over the last month with the board and staff at Cotton Australia. We're getting the message 100% from growers in all areas, and we're hearing it about water being the number one issue. So please, because we're going to talk about a few other things first, don't think that water, just because Michael's on second, is somehow taking a back seat, because water, we know, is the main issue. But just before we hand over to Michael, I'll just go through some of the other things. And I think one of the most important things I think we've been doing is the board and the staff, the political engagement. I think that's been really important. We've had some great engagement with the Queensland government. It's our dinner with the Queensland government. We have the Premier, David Crisafulli, as well as his Water Minister, Anne Lay, and his Ag Minister, Tony Perrott, Environment Minister, Andrew Powell, and other ministers there, and a great chance for our staff and the board members to just talk directly to those key government ministers and leave some important messages with them. So Queensland government, we've recently had key New South Wales government ministers, Water Minister Rose Jackson, Tara Moriarty, the Ag Minister, Steve Wan, Training Services, and Jenny Atchison, Roads and Transport. And again, just great engagement with our grower board members, really important, and some really important issues that we were able to discuss, particularly with Rose Jackson. But I won't steal Michael's thunder. And then next week, some of the board members are going to be down in Canberra, where we've got engagement with Julie Collins and Meryl Swanson, who's the leader of the House of Representatives Ag Committee, and then we've got meetings with other key ministers over the couple of days. So really trying to keep cotton on the agenda. Mainly, those discussions about water. It just depends on who the minister is. When we're talking to Madeleine King, who's the Minister for Northern Australia, it'll be about Northern Australia and the needs up there. I know we've got a meeting with Annika Wells, the Communications Minister, and that will be about maybe some issues with the ABC. So that's some of the things that are happening next week. While I mentioned the ABC, it's another key thing that we've been doing is just trying to build that relationship up with the ABC, which has been, I guess, strained from some of the reporting on Four Corners. We're very concerned about some of the reporting there. I think many of you know we took the ABC to the Communications and Media Authority around some of their reporting, particularly the Four Corners story called Water Grab that was on the Northern Territory. Although it took a long time, the Communications and Media Authority, ruled in our favour that, Four Corners had been biased and inaccurate and not impartial, and so that led to Cotton Australia Chair Liz Stott and myself meeting with Hugh Marks, the Managing Director, and Gavin Fang, the Head of Editorial, to just discuss the ongoing relationship with the ABC and unfortunately, the Communications Media Authority can't compel them to do anything. We thought we'd take the chance to discuss the findings with them and try and find a way forward to prevent this happening again. That's what we want to stop, is just stop that poor reporting. Other topics that have been critical over the last little bit is just our engagement, particularly with students and teachers. And, the field team have been doing a great job with running Teach the Teachers programs in most of the regions, just working with those school teachers to give them an understanding of the industry, to stop any sort of negative teaching. We've been attending careers expos, and I know there was a big one up at Tamworth recently at Farrer High School, and that the team were there. Back in April, obviously, a big presence at the Sydney Easter Show, and we're getting prepared for a strong presence at the ECA after Cotton Conference. And Yeah, as well as I know with some of the uni engagement, we are involved in lots of beers and careers nights with students, just showcasing what the industry has to offer, the vast range of job opportunities that are available in the cotton industry for students that are doing ag related courses at the unis. So yeah, it's a lot of fun getting there and just talking to the students, because they're definitely, when they're in their third and fourth year, they're thinking about, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? Where am I going to get a job? And if we can pitch up the industry to them, it's a great opportunity. And you'll see we'll bring lots of students to the Cotton Conference on scholarships, and we know that the Cotton Conference is a magic showcase of the industry, and mostly when we take students there, they become converts to the industry. They want to work in the industry. They love the vibe of the industry. So you'll see lots of students when you come up to the conference. Our social media engagement has been fantastic lately. Desley Sheedy and Sophie Drysdale have done a great job there. And I really do want to point out, and I did this last night with the growers in Mungandai, point out that when you go to the Easter show and you stand in front of the round module there and talk to growers, and plenty of growers came and helped us at the Easter show stand. There's just not the negativity that you get on social media. Social media is feeding all that rubbish to you, and when you get out there and actually talk to the general public, they've got a great admiration for our farmers and our natural fibre, and so I just want growers to not think that the world hates them, because it's just not the case. It's come and if you're a Queensland grower, come and spend a day on the stand at the Ekka, and you'll find out for yourself that the people they absolutely love you. Stand in front of the round module and have a yarn to them. So yeah, and certainly that doesn't mean we don't. Cotton Australia still engages strongly in social media, and the team are doing a fantastic job there. And then also, I've mentioned the Cotton Conference. Please, have a bit of a look. The agenda for the conference is up there. You can see some of the incredible speakers that the conference committee has locked in. It's going to be another fantastic conference. So please go and have a look at that. And if you get in, in the next 2 weeks before the end of the month, you get the early bird discount. And certainly for growers, our real focus is keeping that grower registration really low. The sort of the $600 odd for a grower for a 3-day conference is a very low fee. The Gold Coast Conference Centre can't believe we can do a conference fee at that level, but that's because of the fantastic sponsorship we get, and we put that sponsorship into keeping the grower registration rate down. So please, just think about locking in your conference and the accommodation at the conference. Other things that were sort of discussed at the general meeting, definitely all the work that our Cotton to Market team's doing on the brand partnerships. There's just more and more garments out there in the market with that Australian cotton mark on there. Brands and retailers telling the Australian cotton story in such a positive way. Now, it might not sell a lot more cotton in Australia, but I tell you, it's giving that glowing third-party endorsements that we just can't buy with advertising dollars. So they can do it, but we couldn't afford to do that. And speaking of in third-party endorsements, we've recently, the team ran a fantastic Camp Cotton, bringing 50 brands and retailers from all around the world out into our cotton farms. It started on day one actually with a natural fibres forum where we partnered with Australian Wool Innovation, with the other great Australian natural fibre, and told the story to 250 people, and then 50 of them then came out to the Namoy Valley, through Breeza, out to Narrabri Weewaw, and had an in-depth look at the industry. And if you saw the glowing endorsements that these brands and retailers are giving the Australian industry, our growers, these glowing endorsements on social media, and particularly LinkedIn. It's just fantastic. Money can't buy these endorsements, and we'll pull some of those together and turn it into a bit of a report so that people can see it, because it's definitely money well spent bringing these people out and spreading the great story of Australian cotton. One of the things that I do need to address is just, one of the things when I'm out there with growers that they express a concern about is that, Australian better cotton being on the same stage as Brazilian better cotton. Now, I think, we've been sort of asking better cotton about this, and I know that they are starting to have a harder look at Brazil. There's certainly some issues around clearing as they move towards the Amazon. There's certainly issues around their pesticide use, and I know that there'll be much less better cotton out of Brazil in this coming season. So it's something that we've been raising with better cotton, because I don't think our growers are feeling like they're on a level playing field. So just want you to know that has been happening, and I think a lot of the brands and retailers are aware of the issues in Brazil. So again, that's going to turn into another great session at the conference, where a bunch of the Australian growers that were over on trips to Brazil recently are going to be sharing what they've learned. So look, they were some of the things that were sort of talked about at general meeting. There was that really good session where the board sought feedback from the growers in a sort of I guess they call it a World Cafe style setting, where broke into groups, and the groups looked at each of the key pillars of the Cotton Australia strategic plan and gave sort of strong feedback to the board, about what was working, what's not working. And so if I break down some of those key pillars, certainly the leadership pillar, there was strong message came back about needing to do some work on farm level people management, sort of that farm manager level, middle management level, some training at that level. I think there's no doubt that our future cotton leaders and Nuffield and rural leadership program are well regarded. Maybe some felt that for sole operators, where they couldn't get away from the farm, they might have been a bit too much, and maybe we need to look at something shorter for some people. And there was some messages received under the leadership one about doing some more with the alumni from the Future Cotton Leaders program. We've had lots of people come through that program, and maybe doing a little bit more with those people. So that was some of the feedback in the leadership section. When we went to the sustainability pillar, there was certainly a recognition that the premiums for better cotton and my BMP better cotton had been declining, and that was sort of causing some concerns to growers. But I think that was a little bit negated by some of the recent research that CRDC had done to show the value proposition of the sustainability work, and how it really is factored into the basis for Australian cotton. So there actually is value there. It just might not show up as a direct premium, but it's in the basis. And there's going to be some more talk about that. More talk about that at the conference when we talk about the strategic roadmap and other aspects at the conference. So strong message that we've been getting back there. Strong messages in the sustainability section about the data and the growers' data, because there's lots of, be it banks, be it Better Cotton, be it Loan Bio, be it other organisations that are asking the growers for data, and that data has a value. So I think we've got some work to do there to help growers understand the value of their data and how to monetize that. And certainly there was some feedback around the data ownership, security, and alike with the CRDC data platform. In the trust area, the trust pillar of the Cotton Australia Strat Plan, just really good feedback. It was the feedback was about how authentic content really outperforms industry content, and how if we get growers front and centre doing the content, it works much better than Cotton Australia doing stuff. So I think that was a strong story, and Yeah, and some suggestions about that natural fibre alliance, that alliance with the wool industry, and how we could, really, exploit that opportunity, that great story of Australian cotton and wool. In the advocacy pillar, there's no doubt we've got the message loud and clear on water, and I think we have been working, and Michael will take you through water, but we understand that is the top priority, and we don't want people to think just because we're talking about things like the strategic roadmap that we're taking our eye off water as the key current issue. But we've got to have an eye on the current issues, and we've got to have an eye to the future as well. And so we're trying to manage that. But with advocacy, we got that strong message, and also the message from growers was that advocacy is is largely, the results can be a bit invisible, and often really good advocacy is about preventing bad outcomes, and sometimes you don't know that because you're not even aware that of those outcomes. I just think of something like the biosecurity levy that they were going to hit growers with, 70 cents a bale every year, that we were able to work with NFF and knock off, and that's an example of advocacy that no one even sort of really saw, because we were able to to kill it before it started. So and then the advocacy session flagged a lot of the issues, the next lot of issues that we need to be thinking about, some of the native veg regulations with this new EPBC Act, and concentrated input supplier relationships, around seed and traits and things like that. So certainly, some great feedback from the growers in that session. And then the final pillar was the governance session, and I think there was definitely expressed a strong satisfaction with the governance of Cotton Australia. I think the key thing that came out was, we know we provide the full Ernst & Young audited accounts to all the the CGA members and ginning members, and it's there. But a lot of growers said, geez, we'd love to just see a simple one-page pie chart that shows how much goes to each part of the business. It sort of splits up a bit like when you pay your tax, and you get that one that says how much went to health and how much went to roads and whatever. So that's something that we can have a look at. And we also got feedback just about I think the board is liking to propose a CPI linked increase to the levy. So it would be something like 5 or 6 cents, matching at the CPI, so that the organisation just doesn't fall behind, and we don't need to then knee-jerk in the future and have some sort of massive increase to cover the CPI and the inflation that we're seeing as we see everything go up. So look, that was the feedback on the strategic plan, and some of the things that were discussed at the general meeting, and I'm very happy to take questions, or maybe take them at the end after the other speakers have had their said their piece. So I might hand over now to Michael Murray to talk about the number one priority that comes up at each meeting around water.
Thanks, Adam, and welcome everyone, and thanks for the opportunity. I'm just going to share a screen here. Hopefully that'll come through now, and just listing the key topics. Some of them probably haven't changed a lot since the last update that I did back in April, but all of them a bit of ongoing event. So we'll cover the ones here on the screen, and probably a few others, and happy to take any questions, either pop them in the chat, or hold them to the end, whatever you wish to do. In terms of where we're at and what are the sort of the key issues, I think as we speak today, our biggest single threat remains the Northern Basin Connectivity Review, and what that may do to reliability and the like in northern New South Wales. We also have, of course, the ongoing Basin Plan Review, Menindee Lakes Management Review, in Queensland in particular, regional water assessments and updates to water resource plans, or water sharing plans, it'd be called in New South Wales. There's ongoing pricing issues in both Queensland and in New South Wales. just touch on this call for a Royal Commission, although that seems to have run out of a bit of steam. And, there's some other issues there at the bottom that, we're trying to stay across and assist mainly through working with New South Wales Irrigators Council on. But with the connectivity review, this has been now going on for at least 2 years, probably a little bit more. And the Minister Rose Jackson has got a number of reports in front of her and basically considering 4 or 5 different things that she could do in combination. And if the worst case scenario was that she adopted all those recommendations, we would see those very significant impacts in most of the northern valleys there, 8 and 9% in the Guaida, Namoi and Border rivers, a little bit less in the Macquarie and the Barwon Darling. However, if those changes were to be fully compensated on today's prices, it would be looking at about $1.6 billion in compensation. And I think it's fair to say that even if the New South Wales government had the desire to do all these things, they certainly do not have the money. We did have an opportunity, as Adam alluded to, that we met with a number of New South Wales ministers back on the 1st of June, including Minister Rose Jackson. We were able to have a very good conversation with Rose on that. Now, she made absolutely no promises, and I don't want to misrepresent anything, and I don't want to be overly optimistic or overly pessimistic. But my gut feeling is that they will want to do something, but they definitely won't do everything. And she sort of indicated that she expected to make some announcements as to what she wants to do in the next 3 or 4 weeks. So it's a little bit of a watch this space. We have pointed out, as those notes say, that just the fundamental case that's been built is absolutely lacking. The other bit of positive news that we got, and again, it's not written in black and white yet, but New South Wales Irrigators Council, talking to the advisor to the Federal Minister, Murray Watt, Murray Watt's officers indicated that they have no interest in pursuing the connectivity issue in northern New South Wales as part of the Basin Plan, and they're not interested in certainly not interested in funding what New South Wales government is considering. So, that puts the pressure back on New South Wales, and with that, both financial pressure and just general pressure, we collectively, the Northern Basin Groups, New South Wales Irrigators Council, and ourselves have written to the New South Wales Treasurer, just making sure that he is aware of the potential cost if this was to go ahead. So it remains our number one priority. Tomorrow we have an opportunity to engage with Mick Veitch. Mick Veitch is a former senior Labor upper house member of the New South Wales Parliament, very well connected, very rurally connected as well. And he's going to provide some insights on how better to engage, or how best to engage with the New South Wales government, and we'll have a improved understanding of what happens behind the scene and who's who in terms of seniority, and effectively, hopefully get some guidance. If we want to convince someone to do something, we may find that we don't need to talk necessarily to the person that we might think is most obvious. It may be someone else that we need to talk to and influence, or a combination. So, this certainly came about. We have some issues and conversations that have been raised by Border Rivers Food and Fibre, challenging the irrigation representative section is, are we doing things the best possible way? Is there a way that we can improve? Are there different approaches that we can take? So looking forward to having that meeting with Mick, along with representatives from the Northern Basin Groups and New South Wales Irrigators Council. A little bit more just on that background on how we came to that $1.6 billion, and that was by converting the reductions into current general security equivalent prices. In some ways, that number is probably conservative, as in on the lower side. Some of the market prices in some of the valleys are pretty thin. You're not exactly sure what the price would be if stuff went to market tomorrow. with the Murray-Darling Basin the plan review, and when I updated in April, we were just finalising our submission, which is now one of somewhere between 2,400 and 2,500 submissions to the MDBA. They'll be releasing their what we heard report on June 24, so next Wednesday, and that should give us probably the first sort of insights as to what were not only the broad cross-section of feedback that the authority got, but hopefully the feedback that they're giving more weighting to. Can't say exactly what's going to be in it, but we'll be looking forward to that. And then moving into the next stages of ongoing consultation with the authority and the federal government. And to that end, Adam and I and our chair, Liz Stott, we've got a meeting with Minister Watt on the 25th. So we'll have that report out nice and fresh. But in very much summary, we don't believe that there's any case in any of the valleys for the acquisition of any more water. And if there is to be any more investment made in the Murray-Darling Basin, it should be focusing on complementary measures and infrastructure. So that's a key and consistent message across all the irrigated groups that Cotton Australia engage with, and pretty much all irrigated groups that I've seen. In New South Wales, we have the new IPART water pricing review. Some people might recall 18 months or so ago, IPART started its regular process, and they set out to set water prices for Water New South Wales and the New South Wales government charges for a 4-year period. They actually came out really slashing the expectations of Water New South Wales. Water New South Wales responded by reducing a lot of staff and saying, look, if we can't survive on this sort of pricing. It resulted in effectively IPART just setting those prices, not reduced prices, but lower increased prices for 2 years and rerunning the process now. And they came out with a draft report, which would have basically seen price increases of 10% in most areas per annum. And while Cotton Australia didn't directly submit back on that, certainly we supported the very comprehensive submission put in by New South Wales Irrigators Council. Touched on this Royal Commission call, which was coming mainly out of the independent member for Murray, Helen Dalton, in the State Parliament, also gained a fair bit of currency within the Farrer election campaign. It's gone a bit quiet since. We would be very, very nervous about openly calling for a Royal Commission if you can't control the terms of reference. You need to be very careful on what you wish for. We certainly saw when South Australia had their own Royal Commission into the Murray-Darling Basin Plan probably 4 or 5 years ago. It certainly didn't do irrigation any favours running through that process. So unless we can control it, we wouldn't be interested in. That's a pretty consistent position with other peak bodies. The other main area of that work that we're engaging with, along with New South Wales Irrigators Council, is trying to streamline the process for floodplain management plans in southern New South Wales, and also streamline the process for groundwater trades. The groundwater trade sort of has been creeping and getting much more complicated over time, and much more complicated than needed. In Queensland, again around water pricing, and somewhat similar to New South Wales, we had a Queensland Competition Authority water pricing process run 18 months or so ago now. And again, it ended up only setting prices for 2 years because the government wanted it to consider moving away from an annuity-based renewals process to a regulated asset-based process. We, through QFF, and Cotton Australia chairs the QFF Water and Energy Policy Committee, were able to extract some funding from the Queensland government to engage an independent consultant to look at this. Our report basically showed that if you adopted the RAB approach, yes, there'd be some short-term gains, but over the longer term, irrigators would be paying a lot more. that position got challenged, I guess, by Sunwater and SEQ Water. We've through QFF and the minister brought all parties to a round table to basically look under the bonnet of the models used. They've had one meeting. The reports that we've got it was a bit of an eye-opener in terms of suddenly at least some of those that felt that RAB did not offer a return on capital found out, oh, well, maybe it actually does. And that's probably the reason why long-term those prices increase. So that's an ongoing issue, but we're reasonably happy with the progress that we've made to date. A key one, an ongoing one, and occurs at different times in New South Wales, but seems to be just a few of them that are very cotton-centric running through at the moment. We have water resource plans, or in New South Wales language, water sharing plans, renewals going on, particularly in the Fitzroy Basin, and also what they're calling regional water assessments, which are basically looking at the long-term demand and ability to meet that demand. In the Fitzroy Basin, I don't think there's too much to fear from that, but I do think we're closer to locking in continued access to the Dawson Valley Strategic Reserve water, which has been hugely important in the Dawson Valley and underpinning not only the viability of our cotton growers there, but also the viability of the cotton gin. I didn't touch on, but I should have touched on, in New South Wales, of course, the Northern Basin is under, in inverted commas, under a Section 324 order, which basically says that if and when the active volume in Menindee Lakes falls below 250 GLs, normal access to supplementary water, unregulated water, and floodplain harvesting would be suspended. Now, that actually did kick in for a little while in either late April, very early May. Then the water storage, active storage in Menindee ticked back over 250 gigalitres, and at the moment it's sitting on 257. So if there was a significant rainfall event to occur tomorrow or whatever in the Northern Basin, normal access rules would apply. But we are on the edge, and we only need to have 7 GLs less in Menindee, and that makes a big difference. Which brings me to the Menindee Lakes Management Review, and we provided a submission. We just basically said, look, we need to be really clear on what Menindee's all about, and then manage it accordingly. But a couple of key things are absolutely clear. No matter what is done, there needs to be good fish passage at Menindee, because we need to avoid fish deaths. And really, while there may have been a whole range of contributing factors, the biggest single factor is that when those fish deaths occurred, it was because the fish that had built up there had nowhere to go. But the other one touches on this Menindee Lake trigger. We've argued very strongly that it is inequitable to have a trigger based on the volumes in Menindee Lakes when northern irrigators have no control as to what that volume is. It would be, if you're going to have a trigger at all, it'd be much more equitable to have a trigger based on the amount of water that has flowed into Menindee over a set period of time than one based on the volume in Menindee where it's subject to management. The management of Menindee could choose to drain the lakes quickly, and therefore Section 324 orders would come in much more often, or they could prove to be really conservative in the way they use it, and that doesn't seem to happen because they're focused on trying to minimise evaporation losses, and so that trigger is very inequitable. So that's our main focus there. I've touched on our Strategic Advice Centre with Mick Veach. We'll also have our board, and Adam Kay and myself will be meeting with the MDBA executive on the 24th around that What We've Heard report and the Water Act review. We have our meeting with Minister Watt and his advisors. Really want to encourage people to apply for the MDBA funded 12-month program for Australian Rural Leadership. Now, when it says 12 months, it's delivering 3 cohorts of 24 over 12 or 18 months. But the actual requirement for the participants is 2 5-day face-to-face meetings and some online work in between. The first cohort, first session will be in Moree in next month, and I think that cohort is full, and I'm aware that there's at least some cotton producers on it. But I really encourage people to continue to apply for the other two cohorts. One of them will be based, the first session will be based out of Wagga, the other one out of Mildura. The second session for all three will be based just out of Canberra and provide opportunity to expose the participants to the what goes on in Canberra. So really keen for people to apply for that. It's been delivered by the Australian Rural Leadership Foundation, so it's a very credible leadership program, but it is also absolutely critical that there is a diversity of views among those groups, and among that diversity we need strong advocates for irrigation. So hopefully people will continue to apply. Look, that finishes my my overview of everything, but more than happy to take any questions. If you got any, either pop your hands up or slip them into the chat. If not, we might go on to our next presenter. But yeah, still, if you want to pop some in, we can address them at the end.
No worries. Thanks, Michael. I'm just going to share my screen as well. And good afternoon, everyone. I've just been asked to give a bit of an update on the Australian Cotton Strategic Roadmap, and in particular, where we've landed with the MyBNP program. So I'm just going to go through, just a bit of a presentation on that. And again, really happy to take a whole lot of questions at the end. But really, with the strategic roadmap, you probably recall that there are sort of 5 key topics that that the roadmap's focused on: MyBNP, or sustainability, traceability, data, human rights, and marketing Australian cotton, or promoting Australian cotton. And so we've spent basically the last 3 years or so doing a whole lot of research and stakeholder engagement with growers and industry, really trying to map where we needed to land on those particular topics. And one of the key things that came back through that process was about establishing the value proposition for the work, because a lot of it is really forward facing. It's kind of futuristic. We're talking, what might be happening in 10 years or so, and getting the industry ready for that. So we just needed to make sure we really nailed that before we could implement some plans. So basically, where we've landed on the value proposition is it's really about maintaining market access in those premium markets, protecting the value that we have now, and making sure that we're set up to be able to meet the needs of a market that is changing. So it's really about protecting our integrity, our reputation, and strengthening our future position in the market. And certainly not, overspending or overcommitting for things that we don't need to do now. So to do that, we've commissioned a number of CRDC and Cotton Australia together have worked on a number of pieces of research to try and identify what that value proposition is and what it is that we are protecting. And this is kind of hot off the press and is still being sense checked by a number of our merchants. So take it with a bit of a grain of salt. We will be finalising this, but basically what the researchers showed is that Australian cotton has, or is and does, attract a premium on the market, which we kind of know, and that we need to really protect that premium because our competitors, and in particular Brazil, is catching up on things like yield and quality. So really what the research said is that investing in certification and traceability infrastructure could safeguard around $230 million a year in annual industry value. It showed us that we are receiving an average of 7.6% price premium, spot price premium over Brazilian cotton, and an 83% higher basis over time, but that premium is slowly eroding by around 60 cents per bale per year as our competitors are catching up to us. So catching up on quality and yield, but also have surpassed us on things like traceability, sustainability certifications, and data to show impact of that sustainability credential. So what the researchers showed is that that what will happen is that Australia and Brazil will end up being highly substitutable, And that's when things like our standards and our credibility really will matter, when the choices for our customers are tight. We also looked at, okay, if we did nothing, what might happen? And really what we showed there is that, look, you know, brands and retailers aren't really paying more for sustainable cotton and traceable cotton right now, although some are, and some of our bigger growers are taking advantage of that. But they are quietly excluding suppliers who don't meet their standards. So over time, doing nothing, and we're not talking about the next 5 minutes, but in the next 10 years or so, do nothing scenarios might, you know, risk gradual erosion of our premium position, mean that we're entering lower value or higher risk markets. We might lose preferred buyer status and that kind of thing. So it's not about, you know, an Australian cotton ban or something happening overnight, but it is a, you know, a kind of a slower process of quietly being less preferred, less visible, more discounted, unless we really make sure that our credentials are known by our customers in the market. And we do have incredible credentials now. We've just got to make sure that the market is really aware of those. So the roadmap implementation pathway basically landed on a couple of key things. Firstly, that we would have a staged approach. So the implementation plan delivers what we need to do now, but doesn't overdo it, doesn't overinvest, but sets things up, sets some foundations up so that we can scale later if we need to, when some of this legislation in, for example, in the EU comes into place and really hits hard, which is unknown. There's a lot of unknowns around that at the moment. We also are looking at an integrated approach. So this is what growers and the industry really told us was, you know, don't make us do something for MyBNP over here and traceability over there and data over here. Give us one package of things that we need to do, make our lives simpler, give us a one-touch platform to work with, and that's what we're going to do. And a big part of that is the CRDC data platform in terms of actually implementing that from a technical perspective. So that's another part of it. Also an industry-owned approach. So basically what the research found was that industry-owned sustainability programs and traceability systems can generate more value from customers and the supply chain, and that if everyone did their own thing, that basically the market would get confused, it would cost more, and it would really be the larger corporate farmers that could take advantage of that, but the smaller family operations would find it hard to generate more value out of that. So basically, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for ways that we can leverage more value for our growers out of the credentials that we have in place now. So this is just to give you a bit of a feel for how that integration model might work. And this is a little bit of a messy slide, but for me, it helps to have a bit of a picture there. So as you can see on the left there, the CRDC data platform, which is in development, will create the basis of the integration. And the MyBNP platform, a new MyBNP platform, would sit inside the data platform. So this basically means that growers would be interacting with one platform and putting their data into a platform once and having that used in multiple ways. And CRDC obviously is doing a lot of work on that platform at the moment, and we'll be communicating with growers about that. The first use case for the CRDC data platform is traceability. So basically aligning farm IDs with bale IDs and creating traceability in a more centralised way from the farm right through to the spinner. And that's really important because country of origin traceability, at the moment it's possible and it's obviously available, but it isn't integrated. We've got 40 different gins doing different things and using different systems and that don't talk to one another. So that's kind of the first case for the CRDC data platform, is getting that foundation for traceability right. And then from the spinner onwards, the recommendations are to then connect to other platforms from the spinner. As we know, Australian cotton gets blended with other cottons from all over the world, and we do lose track of things once our cotton goes beyond the spinner. So rather than build our own end-to-end traceability system, which is really costly and we couldn't really see the real value in that, we're saying that we would partner with others like the Better Cotton platform, like Textile Exchange, and like other commercial providers to provide that traceability from the spinner right through to the brand and retailer. And again, this would be scalable as and when the market needs it, and also as and when the market is prepared to pay for that, because that was a clear message from the growers, was that we don't want to pay for all of this. We think the value is shared, and so therefore the cost should be shared as well. So just I've just been asked to just mostly talk about my BMP in terms of implementation. So as you know, my BMP's been around for 30 years. It's never had a full review before. It's kind of been added to and things kind of added on, different modules and that type of thing. But it's never had a proper full review. So we're going to do that as part of the roadmap. It's going to remain industry owned. So at the moment, Cotton Australia is the key owner of the program, with CRDC obviously a really key partner. And we think that that's really important that we keep it an industry owned program. We need to make sure it meets the needs of growers, but also that it can meet the needs of the market in future. And a lot of what's going on now on cotton farms, it ticks all the boxes. It's just a matter of making sure the language is right and that if there's any gaps that we're filling those in. We're also going to transition my BMP to what we're calling a light touch certification scheme. And that's so that we can remain a benchmark partner of the Better Cotton Initiative. Now the deadline for that is the end of 2027. So we've already started work on the new MyBMP program. And the aim there is really to reduce the number of criteria that growers have to do, take out the duplication, reorganise the topics underneath headings that make more sense, like that line up with the People Planet Paddock strategy, our sustainability work, and really make sure that what is in there is kind of not too much, gives growers confidence that they're compliant from a legal perspective on the key topics, is managing risk, but also has the practices in there that you're already doing now that we can use to promote ourselves to the market. And then we'll also rename MyBMP so that it's got broader appeal. So relaunch the program with a new name that's a bit more palatable to the market. And as I said before, the platform itself is really old and clunky. I'm sure those of you who have used it will know that. We need to make the platform much more user-friendly, intuitive, collect the data we need, and make it much easier for growers to interact with. So that work is ongoing and is already underway. So in terms of the timelines for that, this year we'll really focus on the criteria. So like what is it in the program that we're asking growers to do? So we've started that process already. As I said, we're going to be removing a whole lot of duplication and trying to make it easier for growers to participate while keeping it sort of robust. And then we also need to make sure that it's lining up with those global standards like BCI and Textile Exchange and that type of thing. We're then going to do a really big process of testing that with growers and other experts in the industry, making sure it makes sense to the growers, and at the same time, developing some of those certification requirements. And that's just kind of some things around the governance, some policies and procedures that we just need to formalise a bit more. And then also, obviously, the renaming program and starting to develop the platform. So there's a lot to do this year. Next year is really about, finalising the platform, testing it with growers, training our teams, our implementation teams, like our regional managers and Cotton Info in the new standard, training auditors, onboarding growers to the new program, transitioning them to make that as seamless as possible, and then making sure that we've got those other requirements for BCI in place by the end of next year. And then in 2028, that's when we'll be expected to do our first certification audits, and we haven't worked out the auditing kind of criteria yet, but it's likely that it will be like a square root of the number of growers that we'll need to add a certification audit to, so a third-party audit. And then once we've got our growers transition, we'll launch that to the market and make sure that we're getting the recognition that our growers deserve for the sustainability credentials. So yeah, that's what I had for today. There's other work going on the other topics, but MyBMP obviously is very relevant for growers. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and take any questions or comments, feedback, anything at all, either in the chat or if anyone wants to put their hand up. Wow, put everyone to sleep. No questions? Right.
I think we could take questions to any of our presenters, to Michael, Brooke, or myself. If there's anything we've raised, or particularly on that grower feedback on our strategic plan, those core pillars. I know the board is very keen. If you think we're in the wrong direction or if you think we're missing something, these sort of good opportunities to let us know. And I see, our chair, Liz Stott, is on the call. So, it's a good opportunity if you want to provide some feedback if you weren't at the general meeting. I do hope that the representatives that attend the general meetings do bring back that information to their cotton grower associations and share it with the growers. That's an important function. That's why we bring 2 or 3 people from every cotton grower association down to make sure that message gets back out through their CGAs. So yeah. Yep, no question here, but isn't allowing you. Okay, so Georgina's just raising that she's not able to unmute, but yeah, if people want to just use the hand raise and we might be able to unmute them or pop any questions in the chat. I think that
maybe can Desley unmute everyone from the system? I'm not sure.
I'm trying to have a look and see how to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, there's lots of questions and we just can't hear them.
Yeah. But we
Sorry, I've just done it now. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Right. Yep. Very happy to take any questions. I think you can see there's a fair bit happening. But as I've reinforced, though, I just don't want people to think because we're talking about some future-looking stuff with the roadmap that we're dropping the ball on the here and now with things like water. You can see, the incredible job that Michael is doing with the team on water, but we've still got to, we can't just focus on that and let these other things pass us by and miss those. I think that's what you're relying on Cotton Australia to do those sorts of things. So there's the question there. I can't tell who it is. It just says AW, but far away. Is it Andrew Watson?
Can you hear me?
It is Andrew Watson. How are you, Andrew?
Sorry. Good, thanks. Been on the road. I've only dagged in to hear Brooks talk. Brooke, I know you say that it hasn't had a full review, my BMP, but I think I've heard this conversation about 3 times in my farming career about my BMP. How is this different?
Well, it's very different, Andrew. So, I mean, it's not. My BMP does get reviewed on a really regular basis in terms of what new legislative requirements are coming up and things are added to it when, new requirements come along. So it's sort of been added to on an ongoing basis, but we've never done a full review from top to bottom across all the topics to identify whether or not it's still meeting the needs of the industry, whether it's still managing risks that need to be managed, and really just trying to reduce duplication, because there's a lot of stuff in there that growers are asked to do more than once through the program. So yeah, it is a different process. It's also one that's looking at okay, so what are we doing on farm that is also going to create that opportunity for market access, and for potentially more value for our growers who have got these sustainability credentials in place. And I think the other key thing is that we've never really collected data on MyBMP as a program. So we've collected across industry data on sustainability, which has been really good, but we don't know what impact the program itself has had. So we're also working with Chris Cosgrove and others in the industry to build in some of that impact data component so that we know that, the program's actually moving the needle on sustainability topics, which also is what customers are looking for. So yeah, it's a slightly different process to what's been done before.
And Andrew, I think one of the key things is that, more and more this is going to be a market-facing program. In the past it's been farm-facing. It's been about more a defensive strategy. Now it can be very proactive. If we can provide simply the things that the end users, the brands and retailers are after, it will add value to Australian cotton. Be it a premium, be it an increased basis, be it that saleability. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying not to be left behind. So yeah, I think some of that review is going to be looking at it from what are the the market telling us. And the market these days, 10, 15 years ago, the market was the spinning mill. Now the market is the brand and retailer, and we've got to, provide them with what they need. And I think that's part of the difference. So yes, it's been built on over the years, but this is a root and branch review. Other questions before we wrap up? We've got a couple of minutes left. Very happy to to take your questions, or if you don't want to ask questions at this forum, please give Brooke, Michael, myself a call. Have a yarn to us. If you feel there's value in us coming out and having a yarn at your CGA, let us know. We're very happy to get out there and engage on all these topics because we know they are important.
Yeah, Adam.
Yeah, Peter, how are you?
Good, thank you. Peter Winterguider. My question's for Mike Murray, really, or unless I'm reading it wrong. To me, New South Wales government has says that they've achieved what they wanted with the STL, so buybacks aren't really going to do anything for them. But then you've got the feds pursuing the buybacks. So who's reviewing what in some cases? And also then the feds aren't chasing connectivity, but as we know, New South Wales says it's high on their agenda. So I'm just confused. Who do you target?
Yeah, reasonable to have that confusion, Peter. I think it is fair to say that generally the Fed's interest in buybacks has waned, except they are still committed to achieving the 450 GL up order, and based on their own estimates, that's that they expect to get to at least 400 GLs by the end of the year, including up to, and not necessarily 100 GLs, but up to 100 GLs out of the Northern Basin. To be honest, I think that is almost a tick the box exercise or completing the basin plan by the numbers. But you're right that when they look at the SDLs at the catchment level, they're saying they've been met, and yet you have New South Wales potentially pursuing more water through their connectivity review, which absolutely has me scratching my head. Even from a political point of view, I would have thought that even if New South Wales in their hearts wanted to improve connectivity in the Northern Basin, if they thought it was absolutely necessary, their best bet would have been to have simply raised it as part of the basin plan review and said to the feds, this is your problem. We're alerting you to what we think the issue is. You look at it, and if you're going to do anything about it, well, then it's your business to fund. So I'm not sure whether that's helped very much, Peter, except probably to reinforce that there's good reason to be a bit confused. Don't look for consistency in government.
I'm scratching with you, yeah. Just a quick other comment was that I'd like to probably see us all back to Gundy Cotton in their pursuit of Olympic apparel. So that's the stories that are coming out around here. So it'd probably be good to make sure that every valley gets that QR code and puts that in their petition. I think it'd be good for the industry.
Thanks, Peter. Yes, no, yes, they've certainly put together a strong proposal there. That's now there was a question just in the chat from Cam Getters up there up at Emerald about the Paraquat review, and we're just waiting for the final regulatory decision. Cam, it still hasn't come. I just looked on the APVMA website. It just it's proposed regulatory decision completed, then there's further consultation which is now completed, and now we're just waiting for the final decision. And as you know, Cotton Australia work closely with CRDC and other organisations to put in a sort of a scientific review of the work to try and have an impact on that final regulatory decision. So as soon as that comes out, we'll be letting growers know. Well, look, everyone, we're at time. I can't see any other hands up or that. This is your last chance if you've got a question. And otherwise, can I thank Michael and Brooke for their presentations and everyone for being on the call. Yeah, we appreciate your interest, and please don't hesitate to give us a buzz if you want further information on anything that was discussed today. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. So yeah, thank you, and we will leave you to enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Cheers.
Thank you.